Mr. Chairman, we are now recording the meeting and streaming live on YouTube. You may begin when you're ready.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And welcome to Metroplan Orlando's TSMO meeting. I'll call this meeting to order. My name is Brian Sanders, and I'll be the chair for this meeting. This meeting is in to have a quorum. Members of the public still be able to participate virtually, and we encourage them to do so. There are two public comment points in the meeting. Members of the public attending in person who want to speak need to fill out a comment card and give it to Rachel. Those attending on Zoom who want to speak can use the raise hand feature on the Zoom screen. We also accept comments by email and phone messages before the meeting. At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Eric Hill.
Excuse me. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee members. It's very good to see you this morning. I want to just open up with a few items here as part of my liaison report. I thought there was a slide for the liaison report. Oh, there it is. Thank you. I know you're all excited that today begins Mobility Week. So I'm sure everyone has something in their plans to participate over the next week, starting tomorrow with the 8th annual Bike 5 Cities event. In addition to that, on Monday, we are having our third electric vehicle workshop. We're going to be looking at charging and infrastructure siting. You all received invitations, and for those that have not responded yet, please do, because the seats are filling up real fast. So we want you to be able to get a seat and participate. So let us know. You can also let Rachel know before you leave this meeting whether you will be participating or not. And then on November the 12th, we'll have our last workshop, and that one will be via Zoom. The workshop that we're going to be having on Monday, again, it's in person. So again, if you can participate, please let us know, and if you don't, let us know as well. Also, our November 13th board meeting is going to be canceled, so our next board meeting will be December the 11th. And now, do you want to hear the good news or the bad news?
Good news.
Good news. Now I'll start with the bad news. Thanks. Bad news is that Cynthia Lambert, many of you know her, has taken a sabbatical. That's the bad news. The good news is that Marianne Horn is now the new public information manager. That's Marianne. She's raising her hand. She looks like the picture in case there wasn't any question on that. Mr. Chairman, that ends my announcements. I'm going to turn it over to our safety moment and Mike Wilson.
Thank you, Eric, and good morning, everyone. Well, we've kind of made a full circle on safety moments. We're back to doing pedestrian safety again a year later. And this time around, I want to focus on crosswalks and what's happening there. Just kind of the overview. I want to point out that during the 5 years of our Vision Zero plan, we averaged about 78 pedestrian fatalities per year. For the first half of 2024, we are down significantly, 28% compared to the first 6 months of prior years. So good news there. We do want to delve deeper into try to understand why we had such a big drop. I know there have been drops overall in crashes, not just for pedestrians. And then also, serious injury crashes, about 160 per year. Of those, about 27% involve pedestrians who are using crosswalks, and almost 20% of the fatalities are at crosswalks. When we drill down into that, at the crosswalks, about 45% of those crashes are happening at signalized intersections, and then another 42% are at uncontrolled crossings where the driver is not facing a stop sign or yield sign or signal. And when we also look at who was at fault, who failed to yield, it's pretty evenly divided. And the other remainder, it's usually a question mark as to who failed to yield. So the main messaging as far as how we want people to behave for motorists, remember to look to your right when you're making a right turn on red at a signal, because the pedestrians have the right of way with the crosswalk signal. Also, reminder that, yeah, even if you're not facing a signal or a stop sign, you still have to yield to a pedestrian who has entered the crosswalk. And also that if you have a green ball or a flashing yellow and you're making a turn, you still have to yield to the pedestrians. On the pedestrian side, remember, please, to push the button, which then also refers over to all of you when it comes to our decision about, do we make this an automatic recall for the pedestrians, or do we require them to use the button, which is kind of a call based on how much pedestrian activity we have at that particular crossing. Other important thing for pedestrians is to communicate with the drivers, even if that's just, making eye contact, waving your hand. We know it's not always feasible with sunglasses, tinted windows, nighttime, but make the effort. And then also very important to me, before you enter the crosswalk, scan in all the directions and keep scanning as you cross. And that concludes my safety moment for this month. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike. That's always very interesting. The next section. Oh, you go right ahead.
And added feature to the safety moment now, we'll be also giving you an update on how we're progressing with our Vision Zero efforts. Not comprehensive point, but just wanted to call out the 3 demonstration projects that we're doing as part of the original grant. That one for Orange County is to do a middle school pilot bicycle program. Just kick that off, starting to train the instructors on that. With Osceola County, we're working with them on analyzing a few crossing locations around the county to look at what kind of crossing activity and behavior, both driver and pedestrian activity, so we can improve those areas, improve the infrastructure. And then with Seminole County, they're applying software to their traffic signal system to do near miss analysis, so we get a better picture of what's happening in a shorter period of time, right, by looking at those near misses. Thanks.
Very good. Thanks again, Mike. Next, we're going to go through the agency reports. This portion of the meeting, it's an opportunity for our agency partners to bring forward interesting topics for conversation. If you would like to do so, please bring that to Eric and Rachel about a week before the TSMO meeting so we can set you up. Okay, today we have Amy Beckman for our regular report out from FDOT.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. It's nice to see everyone after a little hiatus we had there, and I hope everyone fared well through the recent weather events we had. I'm going to focus my report today largely on those weather events and what our repair recovery updates that we have for District 5. So overall, the damage and flooding that was caused by Hurricane Milton was not as bad here in D5 as it was in other parts, D1 and D7. Of course, there are spots of difference with that. But nevertheless, the cleanup has required a huge response. District 5 has addressed flooding, washouts, slope erosions, as well as retention pond and outfall failures. We did have a few decent size washouts, the most dire being along State Road A1A and Flagler Beach and Ormond by the Sea. Those are vulnerable areas that we're already working on reassuring with the buried seawall So we're hoping to prevent future damage, and they did do their job, but we do have to do some reinforcing there. There's also a substantial washout on southbound 1792 in Orange City. I'm sure you saw it on the news. We lost both lanes of southbound for about 5 days. The closure took for us to repair, and it was a decent sized washout. So that was repaired. It is reopened. And again, it took us only 5 days to get that taken care of. The amount of debris and sand is our biggest issue right now, getting all that cleaned up. All 5 operation centers have been working 7 days a week and are looking to do so for the coming week to 2 weeks while we finish up. 61 crew members from D2 in Northeast Florida up by Jacksonville supplemented our crews in our efforts to do the debris cleanup, and that doubled our team size as well as the heavy equipment we had available for the job. So again, one FDOT working together. A lot of times it's us sending helpers out to other districts, but this time we were a little bit in need. We are utilizing emergency contracts to return our district to the pre-storm conditions as fast as we can. And many district office personnel, including myself, have went out to assist in flagging operations and debris cleanup. And so if we are not able to return your email immediately within a few hours, please know that some of us are out of the office, actually out there on the roadways doing cut and toss, debris cleanup, and flagging for our ops centers crews to keep them safe. So a little bit of an update on Osceola and South Orange County. We did have a few workers from D6, which is Miami office, come up and help our Orlando Operations Center for our first pass of debris collection. We did have a washout at I-4 and the State Road 536 bridge where it experienced a void in the concrete slope. It is repaired. We also had slope failures at I-4 and World Drive, some washout there with the slopes, outfall failure at Retention Pond at State Road 50 and Good Homes Road, which is still under repair, as well as a void in the pavement at State Road 50 and Misty Oaks Drive, which is also still under repair. Overall, in Orange County, our first pass yielded 801 cubic yards of debris cleanup. For the first pass, Seminole came in at 460-ish, Osceola at 670. Comparing those to Volusia County and Flagler, which was almost 2,000 cubic yards of debris cleanup so far, and we're still working in Volusia County. Seminole and Northern Orange, the Wekiva Parkway did experience some washouts under the bridge in a few locations. Those repairs are ongoing, but we're hoping to have those completed by mid-November. Debris cleanup wrapped up over the last weekend and was completed by our internal teams. A couple of retention ponds where the berms did fail, they are being repaired, and the Oviedo team was lucky enough to closely monitor Lake Harney, and in large part, that was a successful situation where the lake did not overtop. Wekiva Section 8 debris, we had issues with debris as well as ITS failure and outages. The ITS system has been restored, but the debris cleanup is still ongoing. A little extra note to District 5, for District 5 in general, the Seaport Manatee in Tampa was closed due to the proximity of the eye and the approach of the hurricane to Tampa Bay, and a lot of those fuel container ships were rerouted over to our Port Canaveral area so that we could continue to get fuel to those areas that needed it so people could evacuate, run their generators, whatever they felt they needed that for. In a period of about 3.5 days from Thursday night to early Monday of the storm, over 1,400 tanker trucks with 12.1 million gallons of fuel left Port Canaveral. So just another way that we kind of rerouted things and tried to keep things moving for our citizens of Florida. It's already been mentioned, Mobility Week. I will encourage you to go ahead and go to the fdot.gov/project/mobility week. There's a calendar there so you can see upcoming events in your community. I also want to give you a preview that in the coming board cycle in December, you will be seeing us with our work program. It is that time of year where we're going to come out with our tentative work program. If you have any questions about that, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to any of you about that. If you have any questions as to what it means, what it's doing, but we will be here next time. With that, I also have information on lane closure. So if you have any questions, please see me after. I'm happy to address them. And if you have any questions now, I'm happy to hear them. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good, strong storm. Eric, that was your first good, strong storm you've been through, is that right?
That is good. That is correct, Mr. Chairman. I'm not a native Floridian, so I'm not used to wind speeds of 70 miles an hour, only in my car when I'm coming across I-4. But I'm grateful that everything was intact, and I'm here smiling. So that's
Ready for the next.
ready for the next one.
Okay, okay. Yeah, we were fortunate in Orange County that even though it was a strong storm, the calls and damage was pretty minimal. We are struggling with debris pickup. A lot of the interstate haulers have gone to the more fruitful areas of the state. We were fortunate that it wobbled a little bit away from us, but that just means somebody else gets it. So everybody gets a turn in that game. All right, so now we'll move on to roll call. Ms. Frederick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If members can please keep microphones off until called, and then please say here or present. Barden,
Here.
Crandell for Barkessa,
Here.
Henry for Brock,
Here.
Lopez for Carson,
Here.
Cologne,
Here.
Delachey,
Here.
Ide,
Present.
Elisar,
Present.
Elliott Moore, Gordon, Homiuni, Horn, Hirsch,
Present.
Hudson for Hoon, Jameson,
Present.
Kamal,
Here.
Krug, Lim,
Here.
McGrath,
Here.
Mendenhall, Nelson,
Present.
Ortiz, Price,
Present.
Fulham, Sanders,
Here.
Senerans,
Here.
Smith,
Present.
Tahira,
Here.
Mahason for Toussaint,
Present.
Wetzel,
Here.
Martello for Williams, Torres for Jaeger,
Present.
and Yeargain. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the,
Hudson present.
thank you. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the roll call. We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to action item public comments. And if please provide your name and address for the record. Hold your comments to 2 minutes. Any members of the public wish to comment and are joining us virtually, please use the raised hand function and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll unlock your prompt. Speak. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would wish to make a
We do not
comment?
have any hands raised on the virtual side.
Okay. Eric, we received any emails, phone calls?
No, we did not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good, very good. Then we'll move on to the action items. We have 5 action items today. Members making a second, be sure you state your name for the record. The first one is approval of the August 23rd, 2024 TSMO meeting minutes. Do we have it? Good, good. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes. Very good. The next item is FDOT amendment to the 2025-29 TIP. Our next action item is an amendment to the TIP. More information can be found in tab 2. Mr. Sorrentino, go ahead. You're recognized.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. This morning, I have 2 tip amendments for you, and additional information on these amendments is linked in tab 2 of your agendas. The first amendment will increase ACSS funds and local funds for construction in fiscal year 2025. And that's for the Buenaventura Boulevard Complete Streets project from Florida Parkway to East Osceola Parkway. The second amendment request is from GOA to add a new consolidated rental car facility and associated roadway improvements. This amendment will include financing from a federal TIFIA loan. And this is a bit of a unique request because in order to secure the loan, the project must be in the TIP first, whereas typically projects do not enter the TIP until funding has been awarded. And we have included this project into the TIP proactively with caveats for purposes of planning consistency. With that being said, unless there are any questions, we're asking for your motion of approval on the amendment. Thank you.
Any comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion?
Chad Smith, I move to approve.
Second, Centerlands.
Very good, very good. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Title VI, LEP plan. Considering a request for a recommended approval of the plan. Link is also provided in your tab. And Ms. Ann Horn, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm here to talk to you today about the update of our Title VI program, our non-discrimination and language plan. And as the chair noted, you have a link to the document and also in tab 3, a copy of the board action fact sheet explaining a little more about why we're doing this. Excuse me. I think that this is something that you know something about, both in your interactions with us as well as your work in your various jurisdictions. But I want to take you a little bit through what we are doing to update this important part of our outreach. I start with a look at some of our underserved populations in Central Florida. These certainly don't represent all of what we would consider underserved groups. But even looking at this, you see that there are significant numbers of our residents who face some challenges as they try to participate in our public processes, whether it's because of their economic situation, their physical situation, their age, either old or young. And we want to bring these people in because, as you know, we want to make our planning process accessible to everybody. We do have a legacy of non-discrimination. You have heard from us before on this. We have an existing Title VI and language plan, which is on our website, along with the draft plan that is linked for you, which is also on the website for your review. So this is nothing new, but we have gone through it carefully, as is our practice, to update and examine it in light of our world today. And we have made some changes. There's some additional federal guidance that we're following and also some new tools that are available to us, as well as an update of some of our maps. So that's what we're going to talk about today. As I know you know, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 simply prohibits discrimination in any program that gets federal financial assistance. Limited English proficiency provides guidance on how we talk to people who speak English less than very well. And less than very well is an actual wording from the census. That's how they describe themselves. And so that's how we know. While Title VI prohibits discrimination, we want to go beyond that. We want to also show you how we serve our community without discrimination and how we open the process. Not just that we don't discriminate, but that we work to be inclusive. And this will have us complying with our federal and state non-discrimination requirements, but that's just the low bar. We always strive to go above and beyond that to make our planning process accessible to all. As far as limited English proficiency, I know that you are well aware that we have many groups in Central Florida speaking many different languages at home, levels of English at different levels. And we strive to accommodate this however we can. Spanish, of course, is the most common language that we encounter. Many of our core products are available in Spanish, and we are starting to include Haitian Creole as we see more people seeking to enter the process and listing that as their first language. Our recent market research study, for instance, was available in all 3 languages, and our MTP flyers, which are hot off the press, they're over here on the table in the English version, but so you know, we also do have that available in Spanish and Haitian Creole, and if you have a need or any group that you want to distribute that to, all you have to do is let me or Eric know. We can provide those languages for you. And those are just examples. We have many others, as well as some technical tools that allow us to translate and interpret things for people. So our transportation underserved communities, this is a update that we made on this plan, which we always do in our updates. We look at where our underserved communities are, and we define those as places where people face challenges to having what we seek to give people: a safe, reliable, convenient, and affordable transportation system. That's our goal. And if they have significant challenges in reaching that in certain areas, we want to be aware of where those are. And so we use 2 tools to do this: the Equitable Transportation Community, the ETC Explorer tool, which I'm sure you're familiar with, as well as the Climate and Economic Justice Screening tool from the U.S. Department of Transportation. It's often called CJS. I do note, and I will remind you, that our transportation underserved communities are not the only places where people face these disadvantages and challenges, but they are the places where there is the concentration of people who are facing that. And here's a quick map. The green indicates the places where we see particular challenges in community, and you see the figures there to the right showing this is a significant part of our region by any measure. Note, again, this is no surprise to you, I know, but that Southeast Osceola tract there does qualify as, you know, as being an underserved community, primarily because it's so rural. There are, however, people who live there, and we have every expectation that in coming years there may be more. And so that is a large part that is very challenged as far as transportation. However, we don't use that in our calculations because it is an outlying sort of thing. So the figures that you see there apply to the areas above that particular tract, which we have defined and noted in the report. You can read more about that in the document. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions, and either here, or if you have them later, you can reach me or reach out to Eric.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Mary Ann.
you.
Any questions for Mary Ann? Seeing none. When Orange County was going through their Title VI documentation, we absolutely looked at Metro Plan. Very, very helpful. Very, very solid plan as well. It's very refreshing that you're looking at that on a regular basis to keep that updated. Central Florida is a super melting pot of cultures, and with that comes our responsibility. So good to see that.
Yes, thank you for that. And I would also note, Mr. Chair, that in a previous presentation to you, I think that Sarah Larson and I talked a bit about our Transportation for All equity plan. And that is not included here because we are today updating the core plans that the federal guidance requires. However, you will again see information on that. We're continuing to work on it as a part of our MTP. So we'll be back to talk about that at a future time.
Very good. Okay. Do I have a motion?
Motion
on
to
the table?
approve. Nelson.
Nelson.
Second, Smith.
Very good. Any discussion on that? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we're in the fourth quarter of this year. It's time to talk about meeting schedules. So who's gonna get it off? It's gonna be you.
I got that, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, we are fourth quarter. I don't think we're any need for a Hail Mary. Because we're ahead in the game. But this is our proposed meeting schedule. It's also in your tab. The only one meeting date that I'll call out to everyone's attention is the meeting in May, which typically conflicts with a holiday weekend. And so we've adjusted for that. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you for action.
Very good, very good. Yes, Chad.
I had a question on the April 9th. They had it listed as a meeting, so is that just, I was trying to be clear on what that was. Is it just MTP or what is that?
We have an answer for you.
Yes, Taylor.
Yes, good morning. So the April 9th meeting that you see listed there is going to be a special session directly for the MTP to kick off our infrastructure investment scenario planning work. So that I'll give a little bit more information about that in my presentation today. But for short, quick reference, it's going to be an all committee member, all board member meeting.
Oh my. Okay, I was just kind of curious. That is a lot of people. Is there a comment?
Oh, we have another question.
I'm sorry.
We show on the sheet April 9th, but we show on the graphic April 10th.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Good catch.
Thank you. We'll adjust. We'll adjust that. We'll adjust that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. We have another. We have another.
So there are actually there's the infrastructure workshop that Taylor just touched on the 9th, and then an MTP workshop on the 10th.
Okay.
So you get a daily double that week.
Okay.
Double. Daily triple today.
You're lucky. Okay, so with that, Mr. Chairman, we're again turning back to you for action.
Okay, I'm looking for,
Chad Smith, I'll move to approve the
thank you.
committee meeting calendar.
I have a second.
Second, Nelson.
Thank you, Nelson. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Excellent. All right, appointment of officer selection subcommittee. So we're asking for candidates to serve as the TSMO chairman and vice chair from January through December. Eric?
Mr. Chairman, thank you again. This is an annual event. As it notes on the slide here, we look for a representative from each of the counties. And we've had always a good response with volunteers. So we are open to one volunteer from each county. So if anyone wants to go ahead and volunteer, or you can, in your authority, appoint people. But I hope that's not going to be the case. I do see Hazem grinning over here because he normally serves as a volunteer. So
Don't make me appoint myself.
with pleasure. And then Charlie is raising his hand. So we have Orange and Seminole. I'm looking for it. We have Seminole. You're slow there.
You're free to take it.
Okay.
Oh,
All right. I
Very
like
good.
that.
Yeah.
Remember that, Charlie.
So we need a representative from Osceola County. Yeah, put your hand up. You just did like this.
Yeah.
Okay. So we do have some volunteers. So, Mr. Chairman, it's not necessary that we take action. So we can just move on to presentation. We do have the volunteers, and I'll be coordinating with them.
Okay,
and coming back
very good,
for
very
another
good.
action item at our next meeting.
Thank you for that. Thank you for my future relief.
Come on.
No, it's been real good. It's been good. It's been fun. So we have 3 presentations. The first presentation is 2050 MTP status update. And Taylor, you're on.
Good morning. So we got a little bit of a preview already when looking at next year's calendar, but I'll provide a little more context as we talk through the other updates to our 2050 MTP this morning. So to begin with, I do want to highlight our public engagement efforts. That's something we haven't talked about too much up to this point, but it's time to bring it to the forefront. So we've had 3 outreach events over the past few months since our last meeting, where we've had about 60 in-person interactions and 46 public surveys completed and submitted to us to provide feedback on the plan. So that's something we're really excited about. And we have 10 more of those events scheduled over the next several months, and I'm expecting even more to occur throughout as we continue forward with the plan. But if you're curious about the feedback that we're receiving as well, there are public engagement reports that are included as part of your agenda packets with the MTP status update under your general information tab. You'll be able to look at the feedback that we're receiving organized by event, just as we're seeing it as well. So you can incorporate anything that you see relevant for your areas too. And Marianne mentioned the brochure and the kids activity book that we've developed for the 2050 MTP engagement efforts. So if you'd like to see that or just want to be excited with me about that being printed, we can take a look at those as well. So in terms of our technical work, we are continuing our coordination efforts with the Central Florida Regional Planning Model Team, specifically doing a secondary review on their base year socioeconomic data. That's much better this time around, and we'll be submitting some minor comments for some very minimal revisions to be able to keep that moving forward. Later this year, we are expecting to receive the horizon year of 2050 future forecasts for that socioeconomic data, and we're anticipating to share that with you as well, so you're able to review that and provide your feedback. So in terms of our congestion management process, Ms. Larabach presented on that earlier this year, we're at the point where we're selecting draft targets for what we would like to achieve over the next 5 years, with the anticipation that that report will be completed by the end of this year. And then we have our regional freight network. We have a draft of that that's been updated for this 2050 plan. That's under technical review right now, with feedback due on November 6th. And there are several other technical reports that are in that finalization stage, developing those recommendations, draft strategies, and starting to refine those to get those completed this year as well. That includes our health, housing, environmental stewardship, resilience, and financial resources estimations. And then what many of our local jurisdictions have likely seen emails about from me recently is about our needs assessment. So we've completed all of our individual modal needs assessments for on the state highway system and off the state highway system, which is a huge accomplishment. So thank you to everyone who's been able to participate in that effort. We're coming back to you one last time with the entirety of the needs list to each of your local agencies to basically do a track changes review and say, this is everything that we've heard, everything that we've found over the past several months through our 60+ coordination meetings with you that we've had. And we want to make sure that we've got it right before we finalize it and move forward with the rest of the development of the MTP. So a vast majority of each of our cities and towns and counties have already scheduled that final coordination meeting proactively, because we know our calendars get busy this time of year. If you're not sure if your agency has one yet, please talk to me today, reach out to me via email, and we'll make sure that's on the calendar. That will be distributed next week for reviews and comments, with final thoughts and feedback due on November 15th. And then one last meeting, quick update here. So in terms of our MTP technical workshops, which Slade mentioned earlier, this is a broad group of about 130 of our closest friends and staff members that work with us that help provide engagement, comments, and help refine the topics of the MTP through 90-minute meetings that happen every 2 months to stay up to breast on what's happening with the plan. So our last workshop was rescheduled due to Hurricane Milton. So thank you everyone who was able to adjust to the new date and time. But in case you weren't able to participate, the recording of the meeting will be published on our YouTube channel very soon. As a quick recap, it provided additional information about the regional freight needs assessment and how that draft network was developed, how we're integrating health into transportation planning, how we're looking at housing and transportation strategies in terms of our long-range plan, the update on those financial resources estimations, and then an overview of our prioritization process and that draft methodology. And that last one is a critical path item for our MTPs. I'm going to give you an overview of that one here today. Well, we've got a few more minutes. So in terms of project prioritization, I refer to this as kind of the second step of our needs assessment. So our needs assessment is the list of transportation projects that we would like to see and do over the next 25+ years. And the prioritization is how we're going to decide which of those projects receives funding first. So those are two items that are happening in parallel. And we want to make sure that that prioritization process is curated to be able to best address our regional transportation goals and objectives that we've defined collaboratively for the MTP earlier this year. So you're going to hear three terms when I talk about this very often. The first is the goal area weighting, which is how we organize and center this method around those goals and objectives for the plan. The second is evaluation criteria, which is how we measure each of these goals. And then the third is the criteria scoring. So how we determine a high need versus a low need for each of those evaluation criteria. You'll receive a lot more information about that in the coming slides, but also anyone who's participating in our technical working session this afternoon will be able to deep dive that content. So when we're looking at the overall prioritization process, we're going to be very similar to what we developed in the 2045 plan, sticking with our 5 goal areas. In this case, simplifying a little bit to make it slightly more certain that the criteria we're using are catered to the types of projects that we are going to be prioritizing based on the needs assessment that we're wrapping up at this time as well. So in terms of the priority goal weighting, we had a survey back in August to help weigh the importance of our goal areas against each other. And if you participated in that survey, you saw questions of, is goal area 1 more important than goal area 2? You had to choose between those 2 items. So as you went through all the various combinations of those questions, the responses resulted in the draft goal area weighting you see here on this slide. The first coming out of safety with 35% of the overall priority points, followed by connectivity with 25%, then reliability with 20%, and community and prosperity bringing it in with 10% each, for an overall prioritization score of a maximum possible points of 100. So as we look at the overall prioritization process and how we're going to craft this and refine it for our plan, the goal area weighting, that's complete. We have our first draft put together. The second item is the selection of our evaluation criteria. So how do we measure safety? How do we measure connectivity? And that's normally more than one evaluation criteria to be able to accomplish that. And our next step is looking at the definitions of our criteria scoring. So if we say we're looking at whether a project's included on the high injury network, for example, to use a Vision Zero project, is it included on just one high injury network at the regional level? Or is it also included on the county and city or town high injury networks as well? Does that change the high need versus a low need? So that's what we're referring to when we talk about those scoring thresholds and the criteria scoring. So once we go through and figure out all those evaluation criteria and their scoring, then we apply them to the modal programs. Again, this is just like what we did in the 2045 plan. The only difference this time around is that we have more specific categories that we're considering, such as adding a safety and Vision Zero projects category. There will be more to come on this, and I know our TAC members are going to be participating in a workshop this afternoon to really deep dive and provide comments on the draft methodology as it stands today. But if you do have any questions, feel free to come see me after the meeting as well. And then the start of the development of the prioritization process is really the signal that we're starting our infrastructure investment decision-making task here. So this is where we're finalizing all of our technical reports, strategies, recommendations, the needs assessment that's been informed by those, and getting ready to switch to how do we know which projects we're starting with and how do we address funding. So that's what when we were talking about the schedule again earlier, April 9th is going to be more of a formal kickoff of that infrastructure investment decision-making. Once all of these other items are wrapped up, buttoned up, and we can start talking about different options for infrastructure investments for 2050. So that'll be all of our close friends here at all of our Metro Plan Orlando advisory committees, as well as our board members, to be able to provide that direct feedback beginning on April 9th. For those who usually invite their staff to the technical workshops, as Slade was mentioning, that April 10th meeting will still be occurring, so we can get additional feedback from anyone else who may not be able to attend on April 9th. So it will be similar content, but very different audiences and different methods through which we're going to be engaging. With all that in mind, we are still on track to be able to adopt the 2050 MTP by December of 2025. So we're getting there and I'm excited about it. So thank you for your time this morning. Does anybody have any initial questions?
I looked forward to sharing notes. We're in 2050 evaluation as well for Orange County, so be good to get together on that. Thank you so much. All right, the next presentation is regional traffic signal retiming. Laura, you're up.
All right, good morning, TSMO committee. Good to see everyone this morning. I'm going to be talking about the findings from our before and after evaluation for our signal retiming program for fiscal year 22-23. So we're going a little bit in the Wayback Machine. This is not the set of corridors that were retimed last year, but the year before that. This is an evaluation that we do on the program every year. We look at various performance metrics before and after the retimings, calculate before benefit cost analysis, and just generally confirm that there is still value in continuing to fund this program. So we've been funding signal retiming efforts here in the region for 15 plus years at this point because signal retiming brings a lot of different benefits. We can improve traffic flow, reduce delay at our intersections. There's opportunity to manage speeds through signal retiming and improve the experience for our bicyclists and pedestrians. So for the fiscal year 22-23 program, we retimed 24 corridors and 1 independent intersection. And these next few slides just show where those corridors were. So in Orange County, we retimed on 17 corridors. We retimed 4 corridors in Seminole County and 1 individual intersection, and then 3 corridors in Osceola County. Just as a reminder of the data that we use for these evaluations, when this program first kicked off back in 2009, we were out there doing floating car runs. And then starting in 2011 and for the next 10-ish years, we started using Bluetooth data. In Seminole County, there are a few permanent Bluetooth stations that we use if those corridors are being retimed. And then for all the others, we would go out and put temporary counters out. And then we had to pivot in 2020 thanks to the pandemic. And we did a lot of research to figure out our options and ended up moving forward with using connected vehicle data. We were using WeJo data for the first several years. And then when they closed up shop last year, we had to pivot. And so for this last year of analysis, we used TomTom data. Since we were using a new data source, we did some data validation to make sure it was good to use. We compared the TomTom data to both the Seminole County permanent stations, as well as to some of the WeJo data that we had used before. You could see some of the results here, but generally we found that the data was within an acceptable margin of error. So we did move forward with using the TomTom data for the evaluation. So each year we look at a variety of different metrics, travel time savings along the retimed corridors. We started looking at reliability. Since we've been using the CB data, we can look at reductions in emissions and fuel needs. And then of course, impacts to intersection delay and pedestrian delay. And what we found for the fiscal year 22-23 program was of those 24 corridors that were retimed, we saw shorter travel times along 88% of those corridors. We found that reliability was about the same before and after the retiming, with about 80% of the corridors showing reliable travel times. We did see significant reductions in fuel consumption and emissions. At that one individual intersection that was retimed, we did see a reduction in intersection delay. And then looking at all of the intersections that were retimed, we saw that 17% of those had a reduction in pedestrian delay. So some multimodal benefits as well. Looking at that benefit costs summary, when we annualize those travel time savings, came out to about 280,000 hours saved. With the present value of 3 years of those savings, that's $18.1 million using that travel time cost savings that you can see at the bottom of the slide. We spent $1.1 million on the program for that fiscal year, which led to a BC ratio of 16.4. This slide is just a reminder of how that BC ratio has fluctuated over time. The way that we calculate our BC ratio is dependent on those travel time savings. And, so some years, depending on the corridors that are being retimed, we see fewer travel time savings. You can see last year, or the previous year that was evaluated, we had a negative BC, but we're back in the black again. So moving forward, signal retiming is always sort of a balancing act as we reduce those travel times for our vehicles. It can have sometimes detrimental impacts on pedestrian delay or bicycle delay, though I will say our retiming consultants and our maintaining agency partners do work to reduce that. One thing that we would like to see moving forward, it's among the actions we've identified in our regional Vision Zero action plan, is looking at signal retiming as a means of managing speed. So you'll be hearing more on that in the coming years. Coming months, I should say. As a couple of other analyses that we did as a part of this task order this time, we're looking at, from that safety perspective, whether or not the retiming was having any significant impacts on speeds along the corridors. So we looked at it in two different ways. This first slide shows for the entire corridor, for the corridors that were retimed, we broke them up into segments, and then we're able to find the speeds on each of those segments. So this slide shows sort of the average speeds along the retimed corridors. And basically we saw that there was no significant change. For the average travel speed, we saw an increase of 1 mile an hour. For the 85th percentile speeds, or a decrease of 0.2 miles per hour. So we also looked at just the intersection influence areas, so 250 feet around each of the retimed intersection, and essentially saw the same thing. There was about a 1 mile per hour increase for both the average and 85th percentile speed, so no significant changes. Another analysis that we did as a part of this task order was sort of mini distracted driving analysis. This has been coming up a lot in our board meetings. I'm sure it's something that you all discussed at your various Vision Zero progress meetings as one of the contributing factors to crashes in the region and really throughout the country. And so for this analysis, we chose 5 intersections throughout the region that were on the retimed corridors. We're just looking for sort of a mix of contexts in terms of the typical section, the land use mix around them, whether or not they were near a school. And we sent out a team that spent Tuesday through Wednesday in September and looked at the first 5 vehicles at each of these intersections for all approaches. And we're just looking to see where there were distracted behaviors that were observed and what the impacts were on the headways. So we found that of the intersections that we looked at, about 51% of the drivers were observed to exhibit distracted driving behavior, various types of behaviors, lots of phone usage, some eating and drinking, talking to others in the car, other things. And the observation was that about 60% of those behaviors did persist into the green phase. We did not see any significant correlation between the distracted behaviors and impacts on headways. That said, this is obviously a very small sample size. So since we didn't see any correlation with these 5 intersections on the headways, we also looked at just a high-level view of the crashes, looking at the crash data from 2018 to 2022, which is the same analysis period we used for the Vision Zero action plans, and found that of the 630 plus crashes at these intersections, about 16% of those noted distracted driving behavior in the crash reports. This is probably an undercount because we can only count them if the reporting officer actually noted those behaviors. So distracted driving is something we'll also be taking up in the coming months, something that we identified through our crash profiles at the regional level as something to take note of. So more on this as well. So there will be a summary of the distracted driving analysis, of the speeding analysis, and then also the overall retiming study that will be up on our website after we finish making these presentations to the committee. So look out for that. There are also summaries in your informational items for these that you can look at. And that's all I have for you today, but I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Laura. That was shocking. I'm surprised, though, that we're not losing capacity at these intersections from distracted driving. Maybe there was some distraction in that, but any questions for Laura on that? Well, thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman.
Where?
Oh, hi, Charlie.
Your mic, Sean, your mic.
No. Oh, not off the top of my head, but I'll get with you after the meeting.
Okay.
I'll look it up, yeah.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Good presentation. 88% realized benefits or improvement is pretty significant.
Indeed.
My question is, why isn't it more than 88% with the assumption that you go into the program expecting improvements, period? So what are some of the factors that would not get us a higher?
Well, it's improvements for end-to-end travel time. And so sometimes we'll see improvements portions of the segment or portions of the segment that's retimed, but not the entire segment. So it just really depends on which segment is being retimed. Sometimes the capacity issues are such that signal timing can only do so much.
Wouldn't it, prior to going into a particular corridor, wouldn't we be able to kind of examine it and see whether or not it's worth it to actually do the timing?
It potentially, and that would maybe require us to take a look at how we accept the corridors from you all when you submit your call for projects, but that's something to discuss. We'll be re-procuring the contracts for our signal retiming consultants, and so maybe that's something that goes into the scope for next time. There's maybe a pre-screening that we could do.
Thanks. Go ahead, Butch.
Well, I'd just like to make a comment with experience on driving through a corridor. I was on 436, probably starting at I-4, and this was just outside the peak hour, 7:30, 8 o'clock. I think it was a Thursday evening. And I drove from like I-4 into Apopka and never touched a light other than green. So, you know, when you're not maxed out with cars, the timing actually works really well. So, you know, when you're just outside of your peak hours, that timing corridor is excellent.
Yeah. I drive that corridor all the time, and I've noticed the difference in the timing, the efficiency, and you're right. Outside of saturation, it's pretty nice. But we focus in the community focuses just on those peak hours. You can drive it like that anytime otherwise.
It's true. I'll give a special shout out to the consultants. I will note that I feel like Narcoossee Road has been on our retiming list year over year. There's only so much we can do there.
Yes.
I just want to note that kudos to everyone, the traffic engineers. When Laura gave this presentation to our community advisory committee, one of our more vocal members, if he had one of those machines that shot confetti up, he would have, because he did note that this is the most successful program here at Metro Plan Atlanta. So kudos to everyone. And as we were going through these kickoff meetings, one of the things that I brought up was if you are keeping logs of the complaints that you receive on traffic signal timing, let's accumulate that, because I think that makes it more personal. This is just, you know, a device with lights on it. But if we were to hear from what the complaints are, concerns are, we can even show more responsiveness to those concerns. So again, it just makes it more personal, and that gives us the story to tell. So, thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. All right, next we're going to have Mr. Dillmore from FDOT District 5 talk to us about Florida Lane Closure Notification System. Jeremy, you're recognized.
Is not. Okay, got it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Good morning. My name is Jeremy Dillmore. I'm the TSMO program engineer for FDOT District 5. And as Mr. Sanders mentioned, I'm here to talk to you guys today about Florida's lane closure notification system. Often when I talk with y'all, I'm talking about regional efforts. I'm talking about things that happen here specifically within Central Florida. This is a statewide effort. It's actually being led out of FDOT's construction office. So I certainly want to give credit where credit is due. When I show you numbers, they're not specific to our region. They're actually statewide numbers. And so when we look at this, we take a look at Florida as a whole. I think you guys know these numbers. We contribute very significantly to the number of visitors that come to Florida. But there's a lot of folks that are using our roadways. There are people that are familiar with what's going on, and there are people who are coming to our roadways for the first time, where they're coming on vacation and they haven't seen that roadway in potentially a year, 2 years, 3 years. And what we want to be able to do is make sure we're sharing a message of what's going on to help them with their route choice, to help them to be able to make decisions and to have a better experience when they're here within our community. And I think that especially resonates with Central Florida because of just how much of our economy is driven by the tourist industry. When we look at it, that kind of ties to the key benefits that we see out of the lane closure notification system. We want to really protect workers. by going ahead and having some of those unfamiliar drivers potentially taking a different route to get to their destination. That also helps to improve the conditions for our workers that are out there trying to improve our roadway system. It reduces congestion overall, because when we go out there and we're doing work, we end up, in that course of doing work, kind of bottlenecking traffic sometimes. And we also see improved travel time reliability by more equally using our roadway network as a whole. So what is it that we're talking about here? If you look on the left, you see a smartphone that shows an interface. This is what, when we look at our workers, they would be able to go in there in real time, say that we've begun work. We've gone ahead and we've shut down a lane. We've shut down multiple lanes, or we've even shut down an entire roadway. They're able to put that information into that system. Once it's there, that real-time notification is able to be shared with third parties. So the third parties we're talking about are Waze, TomTom, Apple Maps, and Google Maps. I think most of us are pretty familiar with Waze, Google, and Apple Maps. If you're not familiar with TomTom, if you look in your vehicle, that's where they are kind of winning the market. They're able to have a pricing advantage versus the others. So if you're looking in your actual in-vehicle system, not when you plug in your phone and you get the connection between the two, but in-vehicle navigation systems are often tied to TomTom. They also have a big presence in looking at larger vehicles, at looking at truck fleets. So they are a key player in this market. They actually have, if anything, as big of a market share as the others do. And if you look at the latency here, that's also something worth mentioning, is that 5 minutes. That's the time between when the worker puts it in and when we're able to push that information to those providers. That doesn't necessarily mean they accept it at that point in time. When we look at it, we see generally that Apple Maps, TomTom, and Waze are pretty good about updating things really quickly. I think that's still building at Google Maps, but with their reorganization, we're seeing that that's headed in the right direction about accepting that information a little faster. So this is a multi-phased effort that's happened over a period of years within FDOT. So within phase one, we started out with our construction projects. It was a partnership with FTBA, with our construction, our contractors. We were then going through a lessons learned to try to adapt and try to make things fit better. This product was we were the first in the United States to use this, but it was a product that actually came to us from overseas. Amazingly, there are some differences that take place in the United States in the way that we do things and the way that it might happen in other countries. So we wanted to make sure that we were adapting to specifics on the ground here, the specifics within the state of Florida. From that, there is a vision of where we grow from here, which is to move into our phase two, about getting information in about our maintenance projects, our permit projects, and certainly then to go ahead and tie things in with devices. And then finally, to make sure that these are fully integrated, interconnected, and autonomous vehicles into the future. I will say some of that elements of phase four are already kind of attached to our phase 1 and 1.5 phases. So timeline on this. We started this work in June of 2022. There was a kickoff that took place, and then we really went with gusto basically in August. So it was an extremely quick turnaround. We were able to go ahead and get this out onto 500 different projects and train, you see 2,000 people in the use of it. The really good news is it's very intuitive to use. So it's not something that requires extensive training, but you certainly don't want to turn people loose and say, hey, figure out how to use an app on the roadside. And don't worry, we're pushing your information live in 5 minutes to everyone that's using a driving app around Central Florida. So there was a lot of coordination that went on in order to make sure that when we went live, that it was going to be a success, as well as there was an extensive monitoring program. So we also had to make some contractual changes during that time frame. One was to make sure that they had the device. That was a requirement that did not previously exist within construction projects. So to say you got to have a tablet, you got to have a smartphone that has internet access, so that when you're pushing that change, that it immediately is able to then connect to the internet to be able to get to the final destination. We also went ahead and had a work expectation for our contractors that from the time that they put down that first cone, that within 5 minutes they're putting the information into the app. By the time they lift the last cone to go ahead and remove, that they within 5 minutes are updating the application. That way the information that's being provided to these third parties is as accurate as it possibly can be. We're looking at people that are on site, they're in there in the construction job, they're participating or they're watching someone go ahead and actually put that MOT in place. Again, really focusing on accuracy. We do have an inspection staff that is present. So this is actually being done by the contractor. So our inspection staff serves as a QA/QC role. They're able to determine, hey, is this information actually getting updated in time? If not, hey, nudge, nudge, get this in here. They're also able to see when they put information in, is that information correct? And certainly, again, all with a focus on quality and understanding we're sharing this with third parties. So when we looked at the first year pilot, we went ahead and identified some additional needs and things that we could look at to improve and continue to make enhancements in the process. So you see the 3 bulleted out there. One of them was to look at a pre-planning tool. We've got someone that's out there on the roadside and they're entering that information in, but the idea that we're getting that in within 5 minutes is fantastic. But oftentimes we know what closures are upcoming a week, 2 weeks in advance. If that's the case, why not go ahead and get that information pre-populated, allow someone that's on the roadside to be able to activate that plan, to make modification to it if they need to, but really try to make it so we can get more information out there and then also make it easier on the person on the roadside. We also wanted to make sure that there were reminders that come up just to say, hey, is the lane still closed? Make sure that you guys are still thinking the same way, that this is still what the existing condition is, just so someone doesn't end up kind of going through that process of closing up that lane and forget to go ahead and remove that closure. We also wanted to look at how we could reduce the level of effort on the roadside. Again, trying to look at safety. We don't want people doing, just like when they're driving their car, we don't want them looking down at their smartphone. Certainly when they're setting up MOT, when they're sitting there on the side of the road, we don't want them having to stare at their smartphone for extended periods of time. So we're trying to look at how do we limit that input on the roadside and maximize it that happens in the back office. So when we look at that timeline going forward, I mentioned we went ahead and started really heavy in August of 2022. And by October, there had been a statewide construction memo that had come out that went ahead and required it on all future projects. Then we really began working with our vendor on quality improvements, on things that we could do on our business process, as well as things that could happen with the application in November. And then we just continued from there to make some tweaks and some changes with it. In August of 2023, we went ahead and renewed for a second year of the contract. So when we look at the year 1 performance, just to give you an idea of the scale of what we're talking about, there were over 16,000 lane closures that were entered. I mean, let's think about that for a minute. There's 16,000 different occasions in which people on our roadside were able to enter information and make that available through these applications that previously didn't have it. And that was within 1 calendar year. So just a massive, massive statewide effort that gave people a lot more information than they had previously. Of those, 99% of them were successfully transmitted to those third-party applications and were able to be used by folks that were trying to drive on our roadways. 87% of the information was captured within the timeframes that were set up within the contract, that within 5 minutes of the open and close that they were able to put that information in. When we look at the impact, again, we talked about what our goals were. One of those is having to deal with worker safety. What we saw was leading up to this was that there was a constant growth that we saw in the number of crashes that were happening within work zones. And that wasn't just a trend within Florida, that was a national trend. That's why you've seen a lot of focus on work zones and how we can make them safer. What we've seen is simply the implementation. We started to see some positive trends. We haven't seen that continued growth. Now it is early. This does not have a statistically relevant sample size for us to be able to make any definite conclusions. But what we're seeing is that the early returns that we're getting with crash trends are what we were kind of hoping for. So as we are in year 2 now, our focus remains on trying to keep accuracy, trying to look at contract compliance, trying to make sure that we're putting good information in there. I think that's really key. What we need to make sure is we're sharing with this with third-party partners. We have to be a trusted user on their application to continue for them to share that information with the public. We want to minimize the amount of time that the contractor is on the phone. Again, looking at the focus on worker safety. We don't want them looking down at their phone when they're going ahead and trying to put this information in. We want to try to provide as much information on advanced closure as possible so that pre-trip planning can occur effectively. And that also, again, it helps with that second effort of minimizing. We want to try to work with other agencies. Obviously, we've got others in the room that have gone ahead and done this work as well. Looking at Brian over at CFX, as well as Lenny with City of Altamont Springs, have adopted the same platform to be able to share information. And we certainly think that the more information that's on the platform, the better that it is for roadway users, the more complete that information is, and the safer it can be for everyone. We also want to try to look at connecting closure information from different projects. So as we have planned closures, this allows us, when there's large scale construction projects, we can think of some that are a little bit south of here, that'll be happening soon on the I-4 corridor, that we have the ability to look at multiple projects that are ongoing at the same time and to be able to share lane closure information through this common platform. If we have our local partners on that same platform, imagine what that looks like. We can see, hey, are we diverting traffic and relying upon a roadway to be open? That you may also be diverting traffic to that same roadway or crossing that roadway. What we don't want to do is find that out when we're making that lane closure happen at 10:30 at night or 11 o'clock at night, and then have to struggle to adjust in order to try to minimize the impact to the public. And of course, above and beyond, this is a safety effort first and foremost to try to make it a little bit safer out there for the folks that are building our roadways. So this is a look at this, the planning interface that allows us to be able to share information across projects. This is a screenshot that you'll see. And this is another shot of kind of what this then looks like, of being able to open up information within the app in order to mark out that we've gone ahead and closed the lane, or we say, hey, this actually isn't happening. We can go ahead and remove that closure of that planned closure that's upcoming.
The program itself is very user-friendly, both on the computer side and on the app side. So that has been a very positive thing. That's easy to work with, easy to go through. We're still working through some of the naming structure, trying to get that adjusted, and once that gets adjusted, I think that's making a very, very good system to use for the department.
This is one of our contractors who's a user of the system. We went ahead and have certainly been talking with folks that are our active users to try to get their feedback as part of our continuous improvement efforts. And as you see, I think the focus has really been on keep it simple, limit the amount of exposure that's out there. And that's what we've really gotten feedback, is that that's really what we're seeing overall. So moving forward into the future, there's two main moves that the state is also looking at as part of that phase 3. One is to diversify the number of people that are entering information. We started with our FTBA partners. Our next look is to look at maintenance projects. How do we do this with permittees? How do we do this with our own crews when we're going out there and performing maintenance? So that's the next growth in terms of trying to scale out horizontally. And then in order to look at trying to combine information, there's an effort where we're taking the data that's within the lane closure notification system and connecting that to SunGuide, so that our TMCs, the folks that are involved in operations, in other words, you and me, are going to be able to get access to that information, to be able to see the plan closures, to see the active lane closures, so that we can also keep our dynamic message signs, our information that goes out through fl501.com, to keep all of that in step. It also gives us the opportunity to be able to look at those closures, to be able to make adjustments to them in order to further improve the quality of what we're going ahead and offering to third parties. So with that, that's a kind of an overview of the lane closure notification system. Open up to any questions.
Just want to thank you for that effort. It's critically important for our work zone safety. That's huge for us and many other agencies. These closures happen on the busiest roadways, and there's nothing worse than coming up into those zones unexpectedly. It seems like the level of frustration and tension begins to rise. And with the amount of distracted drivers that we see, it's just a recipe. And the more information that gets plugged into these systems, the better. I'm a Wazer, and I've been taken to the country before, but I'm trusting it was in my best interest. But that's a very good system that we have. Brian or Lenny, do you want to talk about your experiences?
Sure, happy to. Yeah, I'll jump in first, Lenny, thanks. So at the Central Florida Expressway Authority, we engaged in what we called a 10-month pilot effort of rolling the system out that actually ended in August of this year. When we rolled ours out, we did start with that planning phase that Jeremy had mentioned in one of his slides. So we went straight to the planning approach, and which allowed for a higher level of QA/QC. That was the intent, right? Making sure that the closures being entered were reviewed by the appropriate folks before they're being accepted on the roadside. And so we've engaged that. We also engaged it in a manner that was a little bit smaller scale at first. We grabbed a represent number of construction projects and rolled them out in few projects at a time, just to get our feet wet and get experience and exposure, and also afforded us opportunity to coordinate well with the One Network team. I mean, one thing that Jeremy didn't mention a whole lot of in his presentation that I wouldn't mind highlighting here is that, you know, the One Network team, Causeway team, has been very responsive throughout the whole process. And I mean, that's one of the things I would certainly say and commend in terms of the success of the project. You know, their involvement has been very helpful, and they've been very upfront about being able to make enhancements and adjustments. So the system's evolving as it goes. There's enhancements that are being laid out as we learn and experience new challenges. There's been a number of lessons learned out there for sure. It hasn't, you know, been completely smooth, but the key thing is we've been able to work through those challenges very effectively as a team, and that coordination with the DOT has been a big part of that process as well. So all in all, I'd say it's a very positive experience. We have extended, so we've just done a 1-year extension in August of this year. We're rolling it out to all of our new construction projects. So as any new construction projects come online, we're implementing this application, and, you know, basically as the older projects just complete, we'll get to a point in time where all of our construction projects are actively using the system. We have started using it in some of our internal maintenance activities. One other difference or nuance I'd say, and it speaks to the customization or customability of the application, is that, you know, our processes are very similar, and we try to align them as much as possible with DOT's. But there is some differences, right? I mean, obviously we're a toll agency, so we have some unique and different processes that are associated with reviews, approvals, and notifications as well. And we've been able to work with Causeway One Network team to kind of input our sort of flavor of review and process procedure to get these things going. So all in all, very good experience, and we're continuing to use it. And I do have one question for you though, Jeremy, is on the connection, first of all, between the system and SunGuide. Very excited about that.
Yes, sir.
Is that active closures? Is that what that's going to be communicating?
And active
planned
closures.
Okay.
I think Brent actually has a copy of the concept of operations. We can share that if you don't have a copy of it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But yeah, Clay went ahead and put it together, but it's
Oh,
planned
nice.
as well as active. So it inherits directly into the system and shows up just as if we would have entered it in ourselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I mean, it speaks to another part of this whole effort, and one of the things that we've found real value in is, you know, obviously the primary thing is communicating to the motoring public, but one of the things that the platform has allowed us to do is really establish at least some form of data governance around our closures itself, right? So now all of our contractors, CEIs alike, they're entering the same information, and it's consistent across projects. And even within a project, you know, you'd have some inconsistencies in the past. So that's one of the other benefits that we're seeing here. And so where that lends to and creates greater benefit is when we're communicating to things like SunGuide, and you know, it helps having that standard data set. So all in all, good effort, and we're excited to continue moving forward.
And then, so for the city, we kind of did what DOT and CFX did, and then a little bit extra. We didn't give it to our, so I guess to start off, we started with the 16-week pilot where we threw every department into it, saying everybody that's going to impact the roadway is going to have their hand on this, and they're going to champion it. After that 16-week pilot, with the success we had, we ended up signing our 3-year contract with them. But I wanted to go into not the construction side because we all know how that works. The people in this room, it might help more on the operation of just how you run your city. We're using it, our construction inspector is putting every closure in for our CIP projects and our developer projects, but we're also using it for emergency management. I used it during Milton to be able to get that information out there. The police department's calling in issues. I'm able to at least send a message to navigation providers so that people out during a storm aren't driving on those roads, even though we might not have been able to get the actual closure out there. We're telling them on the technology side. As well, with one of the biggest things I thought we benefited from was, everyone knows Red Hot and Boom. There's hundreds of thousands of people that come in. It used to take us a week plus to get all of the notifications in. Our GIS team were spending hours and hours trying to put the maps together. This past year, I did it in 4 hours and put it in. I knew it was there. I set it in the planning side, the traffic management. So then it went into LiveLink. And then once we uploaded it and it was active during that event, if we have 3 different police departments that are operating those closures, they're not able to talk to each other every second of that closure. They're modifying it, changing it. They were able to do it on their phone right there. One of the systems we put in place was, I didn't want our emergency services going out there if there was an accident worrying, I got to put it in the phone and close down the road, and now the person is not getting the treatment they need. So we have a dedicated person that if it gets a call in there and they can't put it in right there because of the situation, it goes to their watch commander or to me, and then I put it in from my computer so that they're doing their job of saving lives and we're then notifying them. So it's just something that I saw a huge benefit, especially now that we're able to see what DOT is putting in. I'm able to see 434, 436. I knew 6 months ago that project was coming in. Okay, we won't put a construction project in that same time frame. So now I'm able to coordinate without ever actually coordinating. So it's being able to be more efficient and timely. I would like to say that Ken Selvig is here with One Network. So if you have questions, he will stay between the meetings, and I believe he is also staying for TAC. If you have any questions, please reach out to myself, Jeremy, Ryan, or Ken.
I will say that out of probably Lenny is a power user. He knows the platform extraordinarily well. Just throwing that out there as a resource. He might be humble of saying we. Lenny does a lot of this himself and knows how to use that platform extremely efficiently.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Jeremy. We're running a little bit out of time, so we're going to go ahead and move on. If you have any more questions for Jeremy, as long as he's here, and Ken, wherever you are, there he is. Have at it. Okay, so that concludes our presentations for today. There's 3 common presentations with TAC. It's the 2050 MTP, status update, regional traffic signal timing, and Rethink, regional computer assistance programming. There's general information in your packets in tab 5. Some meetings to note coming up: the Metroplan Orlando Board meeting, December 11th. The TSMO meeting is December 6th. Any final comments from members? Not seeing any. Very good. Now this is a final opportunity for public comment. Do we have any hands raised virtually?
Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised online and no questions received from the room.
Great, very good. I didn't see you looking at your phone, so you didn't get any emails.
I did look at my phone.
So everybody knows he wasn't playing, he was working. It's okay. At this time, no further business. I'm going to call this to adjourn. All right.